Tommy Shelby is a gypsy who grew up in the slums of Birmingham, who started with next to nothing and turned himself into a businessman, a politician, and a wealthy individual of high standing in both the legal and illegal world. Today I'm going to be breaking down exactly how Tommy built his empire and all the strategies he's used. Starting with Tommy's upbringing, he grew up in Birmingham in a gypsy family, but more specifically Small Heath, which is a notably rough area within Birmingham. It's full of crime and full of poverty. From an early age, he was involved in petty crime such as theft and gambling. We know Tommy never had a formal education or any type of normal career, so from young he became very street smart and learned how to make money for himself on the street with petty crime. Tommy's first business was being an illegal bookmaker, which he ran up until he volunteered to serve in World War I. He then came back 5 years later with PTSD and a cold ambition to grow his business. During World War I, Tommy served as a sergeant major in the British Army, and he led a group of soldiers called the Clay Kickers, which were a tunnelling group in France, digging tunnels under enemy lines and planting explosives. Service earned him a distinguished medal, but also deeply traumatised him, leading to PTSD. That 100% affected his character and played a big part in what he achieved later down the line. Tommy started off as an illegal bookmaker, but quickly expanded. Across the 6 seasons we see him in numerous different industries, and you'd actually be surprised about how many businesses Tommy owned, just by them being referenced in the show. He had at least over 10 different businesses in different industries, and this was one of the keys for Tommy making his empire so successful. He wouldn't have been able to do it if he just stuck to one business. So from the start of season 1, we see Tommy aggressively try and expand the different businesses he owns, the way he monetizes them, and also the industries he's in. Just some of the businesses in are illegal bookmaking, horse racing and breeding, alcohol smuggling and production, the opium trade, which is in later seasons, real estate investment, factory and industrial ownership, banking and finance manipulation, international export and import, his political career when he was a member of parliament, and running numerous different charitable foundations. That is just a summary of some of his main businesses and professions we see him in, but for all we know as an audience, he could be involved in a lot more. Obviously this was done to make the show more interesting, as if he was just an illegal bookmaker for 6 seasons, probably wouldn't have been as exciting. But absolutely, this quantity of businesses definitely categorizes it as a business empire. One of the key things Tommy did while growing his business empire was take risks. By the start of season 2, his illegal bookmaking activities were already providing the Shelbys with a comfortable life, and we see John Shelby mention this. But Tommy essentially risked what he already had to go and build his business to the next level by expanding to London. He does this again in season 3 while risking even more to help carry out a huge robbery. He never really stopped taking risks, and especially in the line of work he is, which is more based around crime and illegal activities, there is always an element of risk with this. Tommy would rather take risks to expand his power and wealth rather than stay where he is or even go back to being poor. One thing I think helped him take these risks was his experience in the war. When Tommy served in the war, he literally came close to losing his life multiple times and ended up being desensitized, taking life-threatening risks in the future. This is why I think Tommy's PTSD and traumatized mind definitely helped in his business. It helped him be cold and learn how to handle risk and stress. Another big factor for Tommy's growth was his family, the Shelbys. This mainly include Arthur, John, Polly, Finn and Ada. It's not an understatement to say Tommy wouldn't be where he is without his family, especially his 2 right-hand brothers, John and Arthur. Whatever Tommy did, he was always supported by his family, to the point where Tommy almost used them as pawns in the larger business strategy. Tommy quite often left his brothers in the dark when making business plans and used them for their strengths. Running multiple businesses like Tommy did, he couldn't do this all by himself, and he didn't just have his close family, he also had friends and acquaintances which also helped him, such as Squidboat, Jeremiah, Isaiah and many more. This was by far what propelled Tommy's business ventures the rate it did. Some of the examples of this is when Tommy took over London in season 2, he brought his brothers with him, but eventually put Arthur in charge of London, while John stayed in charge at Birmingham, while Tommy travelled between the two. And again in season 3, when anything needed doing, such as any killings, it'd normally be Arthur or John that did this. So they worked very well together, where Tommy was always the leader that came up with the business strategy and plans. Everyone else in his family played a crucial role. Arthur Shelby, who was the older brother, played the role of the enforcer and the deputy leader. So he was mainly the muscle of the family, but he was also Tommy's second, which means means when Tommy wasn't around, Arthur would step in and make decisions. He then became on to be the board member of the Shelby Company Limited. Arthur was known for being essentially the loose screw. Polly Gray, who was Tommy's aunt, helped Tommy emotionally but was also in charge of the finances of the business. She managed the finances and bookkeeping in the earlier operations, also helped Tommy and advised Tommy on political moves, business deals, and in some circumstances handled negotiations. With her being older, she definitely brought more wisdom to the party, and she was the only one Tommy really consulted with larger business decisions. John Shelby, who was the younger brother, was more seen as the street enforcer. He helped keep control over territories and gangs, and he managed the Peaky operations in small towns and carried out many of the group's violent missions. He was trusted, and he was third in charge after Tommy and Arthur. Ada Shelby, who was Tommy's sister, was seen as the political strategist. She wasn't really involved with the criminal side of the business as much, especially when she broke away from the family, but she definitely helped Tommy in later seasons when he became a politician, as she often advised him on political decisions and strategies. Finn Shelby, who was the youngest brother, also helped as a reinforcement. He was initially just used for minor jobs, which even though don't seem important, definitely helped Tommy with the day-to-day running of different businesses, and then eventually worked up to play a part in operations of the business. And then the next person is Lizzie Shelby, who is Tommy's wife, but also helps with the admin of the businesses. She managed clerical duties, but also helped manage Tommy's calendar as well. Not playing a huge part, but when you own that many businesses, having someone doing the admin and the scheduling is still very important. And then the next was Michael Gray, who was Polly's son. He was then originally brought into the family as an accountant, shadowing Polly's footsteps, and helped do the finances and accounts of all the legitimate businesses. Later down the line, he did get involved with some of the illegal sides of the businesses, and then even got involved with international deals. Ultimately, Tommy said it himself in season 3, his family was his strength, and he wasn't wrong. One thing we touched on earlier is the amount of businesses Tommy had, and this wasn't by mistake. As soon as Tommy reached a certain amount of success with his bookmaking business, he quickly diversified his business and his efforts. We see this as early as season 1, when he started investing in pubs, property, and opening new businesses. This is a small yet effective thing he did which really helped Tommy. It wasn't just the fact that he started new business ventures, he constantly took advantage of every opportunity that appeared for him. An example of this is when he hired Abraham Gold and his son Bonnie as bounty hunters, but he also found out his son was a boxer and he decided to get into the boxing industry as a promoter and as a new business venture. We see similar situations like this throughout all the seasons, and that's how Tommy got into so many different businesses. He didn't just enter different industries, he learned how to monetize in different ways by interlinking his businesses together. So for example, Tommy didn't just own a bookmaking business. He also invested in racehorses, trained them, and owned multiple bookies on racecourses and racehorses himself. The benefit of this is, it wasn't just one source of income, he had multiple, and with all the businesses, it almost acted like a small ecosystem, where one business would be a supplier for another business, and vice versa. One thing that Tommy was never afraid of in his business endeavours was going to war. In fact, this oftentimes even benefited him on his business journey. Tommy's goal was never war, but it was to gain power, and inevitably he was going to bump heads with rival gangs, politicians and other criminals. Although being in war and conflict didn't always benefit Tommy, the ideology of never being scared of conflict definitely helped. He wasn't scared to step on other people's toes to get what he wanted. Oftentimes he went to war over power or money. Take in season 2 for example, he jumped right into the war in London between the Jews and the Italians and sided with the Jews, outing himself as a direct opposition to the Italian gangster Sabini. Again, his war with Billy Kimber in season 1 came as he was planning to betray Billy in order to take over his race courses and expand his businesses. This was all intentional. Tommy picked his enemies wisely and always went for big fish where it may have been risky, but the reward of overcoming them definitely reaped a financial benefit. Separate from Tommy's family, his vast array of businesses and his background, Tommy himself was an individual good businessman, and one of the traits that made him so equipped in the business world was his negotiation skills. We see Tommy in multiple scenes with Billy Kimber, Alfie Solomons, Major Campbell and Oswald Mosley negotiate like a pro. What makes him such a good negotiator is a few things. Number 1, He's got a cold, controlled demeanour. He stays calm and unreadable, even in high-pressure situations. He could literally have a gun pointed at his face, and he would still be calm and carry on with the business negotiations. 2. He knows who he's negotiating with. He can read people quickly, their motives, their weakness, their pride, points and fears. And he adapts his negotiation to the person, so that not only the person benefits, but Tommy benefits. He finds out what other people want before he goes and negotiates with them, and this gives him a strategic uphold. Number 3. He always uses leverage. Whether this be blackmail, debt, secrets, power or finances, he always walks into the room with something either person wants or fears. An example is threatening to expose secret, offering protection or political cover, or exploiting enemy rivalries. We see this in almost all the high conflict negotiations Tom is a part of. And number 4 is just his overall unpredictability. Because he's willing to take such huge risks, he is always unpredictable, which makes the enemy uneasy, and the enemy never knows when Tom is bluffing or what to fully make of him. These are just a few reasons why he's such a good business negotiator, but this was such a vital aspect, as when he makes deals with powerful people, this is what forged some of his best alliances with people such as Alfie Solomons, Oswald Mosley and Abraham Gold. No one else in the family had this level of negotiation, which is why Tommy was always the one leading meetings, discussions. Even though most business meetings don't usually revolve a gun to a head, in Tommy's line of work they oftentimes did. But Tommy had nerves of steel throughout these moments. The final point of how Tommy managed to build his business empire, which brings everything I've mentioned together, was that he always played the long game. When we first meet Tommy in the Peaky Blinders, he was around 29 years old, I believe, after 5 years away at war. Yes, this was young, but by the time the show ended in season 6, he must have been in his 40s, maybe 50s. But the point being here is, this wasn't a quick process for Tommy. Tommy always played the long game and was very patient as well. It took him a long time to build his empire, and he had his fair share of hurdles along the way, which I think was a very accurate representation of what would actually happen in real life. You can get rich overnight, but unless you're lucky, and especially in the 1930s, it was very, very uncommon. All of Tommy's actions were geared to long-term benefit, not short-term. He made friends with Billy Kimber to eventually betray him long-term. He let Michael stay in the family when he knew he was a traitor, just to see what his intentions were long term. He bought property and got into different businesses for them to benefit him financially long term. So when you think about it, a lot of what he was doing day to day was for the long term benefit. So they're my main points of how Tommy actually built his business empire. There are other reasons, but I could keep going on for a long time, but these are the main ones that I thought of when watching the 6 seasons back. But let me know what you think, and thank you for watching this video, and please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.